Guilty of murder in the first degree. That was the verdict in Los Angeles in the second trial of Eric and Lyle Menendez. The first trial ended in hung juries for the two men charged with murdering their wealthy parents. On Monday, the penalty hearing begins, and the brothers could face the death penalty. Court TV reporter Mary Jane Stevenson covered both of the trials. Robert Rand is an author writing a book on the case. They join us from Los Angeles this morning. Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning, Harry.
Mary Jane, let me start with you. A big difference was no cameras in the courtroom this time around, but perhaps more significantly, what the judge allowed as testimony as to whether or not these kids were abused or the history of their abuse. Please explain.
Well, what the judge did was he cut out at least 30 witnesses who would have testified about psychological abuse of the brothers. The judge said that in this trial, psychological abuse was irrelevant, although he allowed all of those witnesses to testify in the first trial. Also, he cut out any witnesses who would testify about abuse in Lyle Menendez's early childhood, and that is because Lyle Menendez did not take the witness stand, and so the judge said that anything that happened in his early childhood became irrelevant because Lyle was not on the stand to explain how those early childhood abuse incidents would have affected his state of mind at the time of the killings.
In your way of thinking, how significant was it that he wasn't on the stand?
Well, he was clearly the most powerful witness for the defense in the first trial. The way that he cried on the stand and he spoke for 9 days about, why he killed his parents and the allegations of abuse. And this time around, the jury did not get to hear his story. They heard bits and pieces through Eric Menendez, his younger brother, but they didn't get to hear the details of the allegations of sexual abuse. So I think it was very bad for the defense, clearly.
Mary Jane, can you explain this point of law that the judge used to disallow this testimony, the reason why he said this wasn't applicable in this case?
Well, again, as I said, he said that the early childhood abuse of Lyle Menendez was not relevant because Lyle Menendez did not take the stand and could not connect it to his state of mind at the time of the killings. And also, the psychological abuse he ruled irrelevant, and that was really in response to prosecution motions. They fought all the witnesses from day one.
Robert, you know these brothers well. You are writing a book about them. You talked to Lyle 2 nights ago. Did he think this verdict was going to be the way it turned out?
Well, Lyle Menendez told me that he was hoping for a second-degree murder conviction for himself. He thought Eric's jury might hang, but both brothers were ready to accept the decision of the jury, and they hope that they'll be able to stay together when they are sent to state prison in California.
So they sensed that the verdicts were going against them?
They sensed that things were not going well. It was a very frustrating trial for the defense, as basically they were cut off at every turn.
What was it like in the courtroom yesterday?
Well, there was an eerie silence in the moments just before the verdicts were read as Judge Stanley Weisberg was reading through the verdict forms. And then as the verdicts were being read, the silence was maintained. Eric and Lyle Menendez exchanged a glance briefly at each other, and Lyle Menendez appeared to slump down in his chair when he heard the first guilty of first-degree murder verdict being read.
Have you talked to either of these men about the possibility of a death penalty in this case?
No, I haven't. I don't think they are expecting the death penalty, and I think they're, they were hoping for a better outcome.
Mary Jane, what happens on Monday?
Well, the penalty phase begins, and that will be sort of a mini trial where the defense will begin calling witnesses to discuss again the allegations of abuse and try to get this jury to have some mercy on these brothers and not sentence them to death. What the jury will have to do after, it could be up to 2 months of this, the jury will have to go back into deliberations and then decide whether to give a recommendation of life in prison without any possibility of parole or death.
How big a victory is this for Los Angeles District Attorney Gil Garcetti?
This is huge for Gil Garcetti because on March 26, next Tuesday, he's up for election, and this is a big win for him. He has taken a lot of heat in the past years for not being able to pull out victories in the high-profile cases, mainly in the O.J. Simpson case. And so the way that they pulled this out right before election time, this is huge for Gil Garcetti.
Robert Rand, you started covering this trial as a newspaper reporter. as this is drawing to a close, what is the story here? What is that we should understand about what has transpired in these people's lives?
Well, I think what people should understand is this is a very sad, tragic case of a very dysfunctional family. And people should also understand that lawyers in court try to reduce everything to black and white, and real life is gray. You should think of the Menendez brothers as a mixed cocktail, as two people that are not all good, they're not all bad.
Robert and Rand, we thank you for your time this morning. Mary Jane Stevenson, thank you for being on our broadcast. Appreciate it. It is 14